Jake Morrison wiped his sweaty palms on his uniform for the third time in 10 minutes. He stood in the back of the diplomatic chamber aboard the human ship called Horizon's Edge, trying to make himself invisible. He was just a medical officer, 28 years old, and he had no business being at this important meeting. But Captain Helen Carter had insisted that all senior staff attend, even junior ones like him. The ship floated in the neutral zone of space, waiting. Today, humanity would meet the Zirathi Empire for the first time. The Zirathi controlled a massive section of space that humans needed to pass through. Without their permission, human expansion would stop. Everything depended on this meeting going well. "They're here," someone whispered. Through the large windows, Jake saw a ship appear. It was huge, at least 10 times the size of the Horizon's Edge. The metal gleamed like crystal in the starlight. Beautiful patterns covered its surface, glowing with soft blue light. Jake had never seen anything so magnificent. Captain Carter straightened her uniform. "Remember, everyone. Be respectful. Follow the protocols. Let Chief Diplomat Peter Lang do the talking." Peter Lang nodded. He was a thin man with gray hair who had spent 20 years learning about alien cultures. If anyone could make this work, it was him. Next to him stood Dr. Lisa Grant, the chief medical officer. She gave Jake a small smile. She had always been kind to him. A message came through the communication system. The Zirathi wanted the human delegation to come to their ship. Captain Carter agreed immediately. They couldn't refuse without seeming rude. 10 minutes later, Jake found himself walking through a corridor that seemed carved from living crystal. Everything glowed softly. The air smelled sweet, like flowers he couldn't name. His boots made soft clicking sounds on the smooth floor. His heart pounded in his chest. They entered a massive chamber. The ceiling stretched so high that Jake couldn't see the top. Pillars of twisted metal and crystal held up the structure. At the far end, on a raised platform, sat a figure that took Jake's breath away. Queen Velcara was enormous, easily 8 feet tall. Her skin looked like purple crystal that caught the light and threw rainbows across the room. She had 4 arms, each ending in elegant 3-fingered hands. Her face was almost human-like but longer, with large eyes that shimmered like opals. She wore robes made of some flowing material that seemed to move on its own. Around her stood attendants, smaller Zirathi who watched the humans with careful expressions. Guards in armor stood at attention. Everything about the scene spoke of power and ancient tradition. Peter Lang stepped forward and bowed in the way he had practiced. "Your Majesty, we bring greetings from humanity. We are honored to meet you." The Queen's translator device began to work. Her voice came through in perfect English, though it had a musical quality that made Jake think of wind chimes. "Welcome, humans. We have watched your species for some time. You are young but bold. We shall see if you are worthy of passage through our space." The formal greeting continued. Peter spoke carefully about friendship and trade. The Queen responded with equal care. Everything seemed to be going perfectly. Jake started to relax. Then a sound split the air. A terrible, piercing wail that made everyone freeze. The Queen's expression changed immediately. She looked toward a side chamber, and her attendants rushed in that direction. The wailing grew louder, more desperate. It was the cry of a baby, Jake realized. A very upset baby. A Zirathi attendant emerged carrying something wrapped in shimmering cloth. The bundle squirmed and cried. The Queen stood and reached for it with her 4 arms. When she pulled back the cloth, Jake saw the infant. Prince Solarix was smaller than a human baby, but with the same crystalline skin as his mother. Tiny points of light dotted his body, blinking on and off. His face was scrunched up in misery as he wailed. The Queen spoke softly to her son, rocking him gently. The baby cried harder. She tried singing something in her own language. The baby screamed. She passed him to an attendant who tried a different approach. Nothing worked. Jake watched as 5 different Zirathi tried everything they could think of. The baby's cries echoed through the chamber. The Queen's face showed something Jake recognized immediately from his work in pediatrics: desperation and fear. Peter Lang looked uncomfortable. Captain Carter shifted her weight from foot to foot. No one knew what to do. This wasn't in any protocol. The Queen spoke in her own language, and Jake's translator picked it up. "Forgive this interruption. My son has been difficult since his father died. We cannot seem to calm him. I must tend to him. Perhaps we should reschedule this meeting." Jake saw the disappointment on everyone's faces. If the meeting ended now, would they get another chance? The Queen looked exhausted. The baby sounded exhausted. Everyone was failing, and Jake knew exactly what that felt like. He had spent 3 years working in the pediatric ward on Earth. He had held hundreds of crying babies. He had soothed them when their parents couldn't. He had a gift for it, his supervisor always said. Something about his voice, his touch, his patience. Before he could think about it, before his brain could tell him all the reasons this was a terrible idea, Jake stepped forward. "Sir," Captain Carter hissed. "What are you doing?" Jake didn't answer. He walked across the polished floor toward the Queen, every eye in the room fixed on him. Guards tensed. Peter Lang looked horrified. Jake stopped a respectful distance away and bowed. "Your Majesty, I'm Jake Morrison. I'm a medical officer. I work with babies. May I try?" The Queen stared at him. Her opal eyes seemed to look right through him. Around her, the attendants muttered in their language. One of the guards moved closer, clearly ready to throw Jake out if the Queen gave the word. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the Queen spoke. "You are not important among your people?" "No, Your Majesty. I'm nobody special. Yet you step forward when others stay back." She looked at the screaming infant in her arms. "Very well, approach." Jake's legs felt shaky as he climbed the steps to the platform. Up close, the Queen was even more impressive. She towered over him, but her eyes held only hope as she carefully held out her son. Jake took the baby gently. Prince Solarix was warm, warmer than a human baby. The crystalline skin felt smooth and slightly hard but flexible. The infant continued to cry, his little face twisted in misery. Jake held him close to his chest and started to sway, side to side, gentle and rhythmic. He began to hum. It was an old lullaby his grandmother had taught him when he was small. He couldn't remember the words anymore, but the melody was burned into his memory. The baby's cries faltered. Jake kept humming, kept swaying. He walked slowly across the platform, the movement smooth and steady. He lowered his voice even more, making it soft and deep. Prince Solarix hiccuped. His cries became whimpers. Jake smiled down at him and kept humming. The little lights on the baby's body began to blink in a slower pattern. The tiny crystalline hands unclenched. The chamber had gone completely silent except for Jake's humming. Everyone watched in amazement. Slowly, the baby's eyes began to close. His breathing evened out. The whimpers stopped. Within 5 minutes of Jake taking him, Prince Solarix was fast asleep. Jake stood there, barely daring to breathe. The baby was peaceful in his arms. He looked up and found the Queen staring at him with an expression he couldn't read. She spoke in her own language, her voice filled with emotion. The translator picked it up. "In 3 months, no one has done this. My best attendants, my wisest advisors, trained caregivers. None could soothe him when he was truly distressed. Yet you, a stranger from another species, have done it in moments." Jake carefully handed the baby back. The Queen took her son with infinite care, and the infant stayed asleep. She looked at Jake with those strange, beautiful eyes. Then she spoke words that would change Jake's life forever. "By the ancient laws of the Zirathi Empire, any person who can soothe the royal heir when all others have failed has proven themselves worthy of joining the royal bloodline. You, Jake Morrison of Earth, have passed a test you did not know you were taking. I declare before these witnesses that you shall marry me and become Prince Consort of the Zirathi Empire." Jake's mouth opened. No sound came out. His brain seemed to have stopped working. Around him, he heard gasps from the human delegation. Excited chatter broke out among the Zirathi attendants. Captain Carter's voice cracked as she spoke. "Your Majesty, surely there's been a misunderstanding." "There is no misunderstanding," the Queen said firmly. "The law is ancient and absolute. This human has proven his worth. The wedding will take place in 2 of your Earth days. You may prepare him." Jake found his voice at last. "I what?" "I can't. I'm not—" But the Queen had already turned away, carrying her sleeping son toward the private chambers. The attendants began to talk rapidly among themselves. Guards moved to escort the humans back to their ship. Jake stood frozen on the platform, his mind spinning. He had come here as a nobody, just another crew member. Now he was supposed to marry an alien queen? He looked down at his hands, the hands that had somehow calmed an alien prince. They were shaking. Dr. Lisa Grant touched his shoulder. "Jake, we need to go." He followed her numbly back through the crystal corridors, back to the horizon's edge. Behind him, he could hear Peter Lang already arguing with Zirathi officials. trying to find a diplomatic way out of this situation. But Jake could see. The conference room aboard the Horizon's Edge exploded with voices. Everyone was talking at once, and none of it was good. This is insane. Captain Carter slammed her hand on the table. We can't just hand over one of our crew members like some kind of peace offering. Peter Lang shook his head, his face pale. It's not that simple. I've been reading through Zerathi law files. This tradition goes back thousands of years. If Jake refuses, it's considered the worst possible insult. We're talking about war, Captain. Jake sat in the corner of the room, still in shock. His uniform felt too tight. His head hurt. Nothing about this seemed real. Dr. Lisa Grant sat down next to him. How are you holding up? I don't know, Jake said honestly. A few hours ago I was just a medical officer. Now I'm supposed to marry a queen? An alien queen? This doesn't happen to people like me. People like you? Lisa asked gently. Normal people. Nobody special. I'm not a hero or a diplomat. I'm good with babies. That's it. That skill just might have saved humanity from a war, Lisa said. That seems pretty special to me. Across the room, Peter was pulling up more information on his tablet. Listen to this. In Zerathi culture, the ability to calm the royal air is seen as a sign of a pure heart and strong spirit. They believe it means the person has been chosen by fate. We can't argue against their religious beliefs, So what do we do? Captain Carter asked. She looked tired. We have 48 hours before this wedding is supposed to happen. We could run, someone suggested. Jump to light speed and get out of here. And make an enemy of the most powerful empire in this sector? Peter shook his head. That would be suicide for human expansion. We'd be trapped in our own small area of space for generations. Jake stood up. His legs felt weak, but he managed to walk to the table. What if I just talk to her? Explain that I can't do this? Everyone looked at him with pity. Peter sighed. Jake, I don't think you understand. Queen Velkara isn't cruel from what we've learned. But she's bound by the same laws as everyone else. She can't just change ancient tradition because it's inconvenient. A message alert beeped. Captain Carter read it and groaned. The Queen requests Jake's presence aboard the Zerathi ship. The baby is crying again. Jake felt something twist in his chest. That poor baby. He remembered the desperate look in the Queen's eyes. Whatever else was happening, Prince Solarix needed help. I'll go, he said quietly. Jake, you don't have to, Lisa started to say. Yes, I do. That baby needs someone. I can't just leave him crying. Jake managed a weak smile. Besides, maybe I can talk to the Queen while I'm there. An hour later, Jake walked through the crystal corridors again. This time, a Zerathi attendant named Shira guided him. She was smaller than the Queen, maybe 6 feet tall, with green-tinted crystal skin. She had been kind to him, speaking slowly so the translator could keep up. The Queen is very grateful you came, Shira said. Prince Solarix has been crying for an hour. Nothing helps. They reached the royal quarters. The rooms were beautiful, filled with soft light and comfortable furniture that looked both alien and somehow familiar. Jake could hear the baby crying from another room. Queen Velkara emerged, holding her son. She looked exhausted. Her elegant robes were wrinkled and her opal eyes had lost some of their shine. She saw Jake and her whole body seemed to relax. Jake Morrison, she said. Thank you for coming. Jake bowed awkwardly. Your Majesty, may I? She handed him the baby without hesitation. Jake took the warm bundle and started his gentle swaying motion. He hummed the same lullaby. Within minutes, Prince Solarix calmed down and fell asleep. The Queen watched him with an expression Jake couldn't quite read. You make it look so easy. It's not about being easy, Jake said softly. It's about patience and paying attention to what the baby needs. None of my people can do what you do. The Queen gestured to a comfortable chair. Please sit. We should talk. Jake carefully sat down, keeping the baby secure in his arms. The Queen sat across from him, her 4 hands folded in her lap. Your Majesty, about this marriage, you wish to refuse. It wasn't a question. Yes. I mean, no offense to you. You seem like a good person, but I barely know you. We're from different species, different worlds. I don't understand your culture, your laws, anything.
How can I marry you?
The Queen was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than before. I understand your fear. This is not how I imagined my second marriage either. Your second? My first mate, Kelos, died 2 years ago in a border war. He was brave and kind. I loved him deeply. The queen looked at her sleeping son. Solarix never met his father. Kalos died before he was born. Jake felt a pang of sympathy. I'm so sorry. Since then I have ruled alone. It is difficult. And my son, she paused. Something is wrong with him. He cries more than normal infants. He doesn't respond to our touch the way he should. Our doctors cannot find the cause. I have been desperate for help. Jake looked down at the peaceful baby in his arms. With his medical training, he had noticed something odd. The baby's body temperature, his reactions, the way he seemed almost uncomfortable in Zerathi arms but calm in human ones. Your Majesty, may I examine him? Properly, I mean. With medical equipment? The Queen's eyes widened. You think you can help him? Maybe I'd need to run some tests. But I have an idea. For the first time, the Queen smiled. It transformed her face, making her look younger and less burdened. Then we shall arrange it. Come tomorrow, and bring your medical equipment. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Jake kept rocking the baby gently. About the marriage, the Queen said eventually. I do not expect love from you, Jake Morrison. In my culture, royal marriages are about partnership and duty. You would help me raise my son and rule the empire. In return, you would have power, wealth, and respect. But I don't want power or wealth, Jake said. I just want to help sick people. That's all I ever wanted. Then help my son, the Queen said simply. He is sick in a way we do not understand. You are the only one who can comfort him. Is that not your purpose? To help those who need healing? Jake had no answer for that. She was right. He had become a doctor to help people who were suffering. It didn't matter that this patient was an alien prince. If I agreed to this, Jake said slowly, what would happen to me? Would I have to give up being human? Stop talking to my crew? No, the Queen said firmly. You would be a bridge between our peoples. You would maintain contact with Earth. You would teach us about humanity, and we would teach you about the Zerathi. That is the value of such a union. It wasn't what Jake had expected. He had imagined being locked in a golden cage, separated from everything he knew. But this sounded different. Can I think about it? He asked. You have until tomorrow evening, the Queen said. That is when our laws require an answer. Jake carefully handed the sleeping prince back to his mother. The baby stirred but didn't wake. The Queen held her son close, her expression tender. Thank you for coming, she said. Whatever you decide, I'm grateful for your kindness to my son. Jake bowed and left. Shira guided him back to the transport pod. His mind was spinning with everything the Queen had said. Back on the horizon's edge, everyone wanted answers. Jake told them about the conversation. He told them about the baby's condition and his theory about what might be wrong. He told them how tired and worried the Queen looked. She's not a monster, Jake said. She's just a mother trying to help her sick child. And she's a queen trying to do what's best for her people. Captain Carter sat down heavily. So what are you going to do? I don't know yet. Jake rubbed his eyes. He was exhausted. Can I use the medical bay? I want to research something. Dr. Lisa Grant took him to the medical bay and helped him access the database. They spent hours going through information about Zerathi biology. Finally, Jake found what he was looking for. Look at this, he said excitedly. Zerathi naturally produce electromagnetic fields. It's how they communicate on a subtle level, but humans don't have that. We're electromagnetically neutral. So? Lisa didn't understand yet. So what if Prince Solarix is hypersensitive to those fields? What if all the electromagnetic energy from other Zerathi overwhelms him? That would explain why he's always crying, why he can't sleep properly. He's in constant discomfort. Lisa's eyes widened. And when you hold him, a human with no electromagnetic field, he finally gets relief. Jake, that's brilliant. But if that's true, then I might be the only one who can help him, Jake finished. At least until we figure out a treatment. He sat back in his chair, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He thought about his life on Earth, his small apartment, his job at the hospital, his few friends. It was a simple life, but it was his. Then he thought about Prince Solarix, crying in pain because of a condition nobody understood. He thought about Queen Velcara, exhausted and desperate. He thought about humanity's future, trapped in a small section of space if this alliance failed. Jake had never wanted to be a hero. He had never wanted to be important. But sometimes life didn't give you a choice. The next evening, Jake stood before Queen Velcara in the same crystal chamber where they had first met. The human delegation was present, looking anxious. Zirathi officials filled the room, watching carefully. "Jake Morrison," the Queen said formally. "Have you made your decision?" Jake took a deep breath. His heart pounded, but his voice was steady when he spoke. "I have conditions," he said. The room erupted in murmurs. Peter Lang looked shocked that Jake would dare to negotiate. But the Queen raised one hand and everyone fell silent. "Speak your conditions." "I want to continue my medical work. I want to help not just Prince Celerix, but any Zirathi who need medical care. I want to maintain contact with Earth and visit when possible. I want to learn your culture properly, not just be a symbol. And I want respect, not because of some ancient law, but because I'm a person." The Queen considered this. Then she stood and walked down from her platform until she stood directly in front of Jake. She was so much taller than him, but somehow it didn't feel intimidating. "You shall have all of that," she said, "and more. You shall be my partner in ruling this empire, and together we shall build a future for both our peoples." She held out one of her 4 hands. Jake looked at it for a moment, then reached out and took it. Her skin was smooth and warm. Her grip was gentle. "Then I accept," Jake said. "I'll marry you." The crystal chamber filled with sounds of celebration from the Zirathi. The human delegation looked relieved, though Captain Carter still seemed worried. Queen Velcara smiled down at him. "You are braver than you know, Jake Morrison. Come, we have much to prepare, and my son will be happy to see you." As they walked toward the royal quarters together, Jake realized his life had just changed forever. He was no longer just a medical officer. He was about to become a prince. He still couldn't quite believe it. But when he heard Prince Celerix crying in the next room, he knew he had made the right choice. Some decisions weren't about what you wanted. They were about what was needed. And right now a baby needed him. That was enough. The wedding ceremony was unlike anything Jake had ever imagined. He stood in the grand hall of the Zirathi flagship, wearing robes that felt like water flowing over his skin. The material was some kind of Zirathi fabric that changed colors slowly, shifting from deep blue to purple to silver. It was beautiful and strange and made him feel like he was in a dream. Around him, thousands of Zirathi filled the enormous space. More watched through holographic projections from across the empire. Jake had never seen so many eyes on him at once. His hands wanted to shake, but he forced them to stay steady. The human delegation stood in a place of honor. Captain Carter wore her formal uniform. Dr. Lisa Grant gave him an encouraging smile. Peter Lang looked nervous, probably worried that something would go wrong. Behind them stood Admiral Frank Hayes and Ambassador Linda Torres, who had arrived from Earth just this morning. They represented humanity's government here to witness this unprecedented moment. Music began to play. It wasn't like human music. The sounds were higher, almost crystal-like, as if someone was playing a glass instrument. It was beautiful in a way that made Jake's chest ache. Queen Velcara entered from the far side of the hall. Jake's breath caught. She wore ceremonial armor made of silver and crystal that caught the light like 1,000 stars. Her forearms held different symbolic items, things that Peter had tried to explain to Jake but that he didn't fully understand. She moved with grace and power, every inch a queen. But when she reached Jake and looked down at him, her opal eyes were gentle. She was nervous too, he realized. This was just as strange for her as it was for him. The ceremony master, an ancient Zirathi named Horath, began to speak in the Zirathi language. Jake's translator earpiece picked it up, but the words were formal and old-fashioned. Something about the bonding of souls, the joining of bloodlines, the future of the empire. Jake spoke his vows in carefully practiced Zirathi. He stumbled over some of the words, and he saw several Zirathi smile. But they weren't mocking smiles. They seemed touched that he had tried. Queen Velcara spoke her vows in both Zirathi and English. When she said Jake's name in his own language, something warm bloomed in his chest. She was trying too, he realized. This wasn't easy for either of them. Then came the human part of the ceremony. Ambassador Torres stepped forward and read from a document. She spoke about unity between different peoples, about courage and hope. It was shorter than the Zirathi portion, but it made Jake feel less alone. He was still human. This ceremony recognized that. The final ritual involved the joining of hands. Queen Velcara placed one of her hands over Jake's. Her skin was warm and smooth. Energy seemed to pulse between them, though Jake didn't know if that was real or just his imagination. "We are bound," she said in English. "From this day forward, you are Prince Consort Jake Morrison of the Zarathi Empire." The hall erupted in sound. The Zarathi made a humming noise that vibrated through Jake's bones. The humans clapped. Somewhere, Prince Solarix let out a happy gurgle. He was being held by Shira near the front, and he seemed to be enjoying all the excitement. Jake was married. To an alien queen. He was a prince now. None of it felt real. The celebration afterward was overwhelming. So many Zarathi wanted to meet him, to touch his hand, to welcome him. Jake did his best to be polite, but his face hurt from smiling. He was grateful when Queen Velkara, now his wife, rescued him. "Come," she said. "Let us take a moment away from the crowd." She led him to a private balcony that overlooked the stars. It was quieter here, peaceful. Jake took a deep breath and felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. "That was intense," he said. "Yes." The queen, his wife, stood beside him. "You did well. My people are impressed by you. Are they?" Half of them looked at me like I was some kind of interesting insect. She laughed. It was the first time Jake had heard her really laugh. The sound was musical, like wind chimes. Some are curious. Some are suspicious. That is natural. You are the first human to ever join the royal family. But they will see your worth in time. "What about you?" Jake asked. "Do you see my worth?" She looked at him with those strange, beautiful eyes. "I see a man who puts others before himself. I see someone who stepped forward when everyone else stepped back. I see the only person who can soothe my son when he suffers. Yes, Jake Morrison, I see your worth." Jake felt his cheeks warm. "I'm just trying to help. That is worth more than you know." A Zarathi attendant approached and whispered something to the queen. She nodded and turned to Jake. "The council wishes to meet with you tomorrow. They want to discuss your role in the empire, and there is much you need to learn about governing." Jake felt a spike of anxiety. "I don't know anything about ruling an empire." "You will learn. I will teach you." She paused. "But tonight you should rest. Come. I will show you to your quarters." The royal quarters were enormous. Jake had his own suite with rooms for sleeping, working, and relaxing. Everything was comfortable but clearly designed for Zarathi, not humans. The bed was too large, the chairs too tall. He would need to make adjustments. "Tomorrow we will modify things to suit you," the queen said, noticing his discomfort. "This is your home now. It should feel like one." A soft cry came from the next room. Prince Solarix. Jake moved without thinking, following the sound. He found the baby in a crystal bassinet, not quite crying but fussing. The moment Solarix saw Jake, he reached out his tiny arms. Jake picked him up and held him close. The baby settled immediately, making happy cooing sounds. The queen stood in the doorway, watching them. "He loves you already," she said softly. "I'm pretty fond of him too," Jake admitted. He sat in a chair, adjusting his grip to account for its height, and looked at the baby in his arms. "Your Majesty, tomorrow can I run those medical tests I mentioned? I really think I can help him. Please, when we are alone, call me Velkara. We are married now. Formality is not needed in private." She moved closer. "And yes, you may do whatever you think will help him." The next morning, Jake set up a small medical lab in his quarters. Dr. Lisa Grant came over from the horizon's edge with equipment. Together they examined Prince Solarix carefully. The baby was patient, seeming to understand they were trying to help. The tests confirmed what Jake had suspected. Prince Solarix had a rare condition that made him hypersensitive to electromagnetic fields. Every Zarathi naturally produced these fields as part of their biology. To the baby, it was like being surrounded by constant noise he couldn't escape. No wonder he cried so much. "This is incredible," Lisa said, looking at the readings. "Jake, this condition probably affects other Zarathi children too. If we can develop a treatment, we could help so many people," Jake finished. His mind raced with possibilities. "We need to talk to Zarathi doctors, compare notes. Maybe there's a way to dampen the electromagnetic sensitivity or help the child's body adjust." Velkara entered the room. "You have found something?" Jake explained the condition as simply as he could. He showed her the test results and his theories about treatment. She listened carefully, and Jake could see her brilliant mind working through the information. "My medical staff will be amazed," she said. "This has been a mystery for generations. Rare infants who cannot be comforted, who struggle to grow strong. We thought it was a curse or bad fortune. It's not a curse. It's just biology. Jake looked at the sleeping baby. "And we can fix it." That afternoon, Jake met with the Zirathi Medical Council. It was intimidating at first, all these experts looking at him skeptically. But when he presented his findings, everything changed. The doctors were excited, asking questions, discussing possibilities. Jake found himself in his element, talking about medicine and treatment options. One older doctor named Varath was especially interested. "How did you discover this when we could not?" "Because I'm different," Jake said honestly. "I don't have electromagnetic fields, so I noticed what happened when the baby was around me versus around Zirathi. Sometimes an outsider's perspective helps." "Wise words," Varath said. "You are more than just the Queen's new mate. You are a healer. That is valuable." Jake felt a swell of pride. For the first time since this crazy situation started, he felt like he belonged. This was something he could do. This was something that mattered. But not everyone was happy about the marriage or Jake's new position. That became clear during his first meeting with the High Council. The council chamber was a circular room with seats rising up around a central platform. Jake stood on that platform, feeling very small as dozens of Zirathi officials looked down at him. Most seemed curious or neutral. But one, a tall Zirathi with dark purple skin named Krathnor, looked hostile. He was the High Chancellor, and he clearly didn't like Jake. "This human has no training in governance," Krathnor said coldly. "He knows nothing of our laws, our customs, our history, yet he is given power equal to the Queen. This is foolishness." "He is given the opportunity to learn," Velkara said firmly. She sat on her throne, looking every bit the powerful ruler, and he has already proven his value by discovering a medical condition that has puzzled us for generations. "One medical discovery does not make him fit to rule an empire," Krathnor shot back. "Your Majesty, I mean no disrespect, but this union was made in haste. The ancient law should not force us into such a decision." Other council members murmured. Some seemed to agree with Krathnor, others defended Jake. The Queen raised her hand and everyone fell silent. "The law is the law," she said. Jake Morrison soothed the royal heir when none could. He has accepted the responsibility that comes with that gift. The council will respect him as they respect me. Krathnor bowed, but his eyes were cold. "As you command, Your Majesty." The meeting continued, but Jake could feel the tension. Krathnor asked him pointed questions, trying to make him look foolish. Jake did his best to answer honestly, admitting when he didn't know something. Some council members seemed to respect that honesty. Others saw it as weakness. That night, Jake was exhausted. He sat in his quarters with Prince Celerix in his arms, rocking the baby gently. Velkara found him there. "Krathnor will be a problem," she said. "I noticed," Jake sighed. "He's not wrong, though. I don't know anything about ruling. You will learn. I was not born knowing how to rule either. It is something you grow into." She sat beside him. "But be careful of Krathnor, he is ambitious. He hoped to influence me as a widow with no strong partner. Your presence threatens his plans." "Great. So I have enemies already." "You have allies too. Varath likes you. The medical community respects you. And you have me." She placed one of her hands on his shoulder. "We are partners now, Jake. I will not let Krathnor harm you." Over the following days, Jake began to find his rhythm. He spent mornings with Prince Celerix, caring for the baby and continuing medical research. He spent afternoons learning about Zirathi law and history from patient tutors. Evenings were for council meetings and diplomatic functions. It was overwhelming, but Jake was adapting. He made friends with some of the younger council members who were excited about cultural exchange with humans. He corresponded regularly with Captain Carter and the Horizon's Edge crew. He even started learning to speak Zirathi without the translator, though his pronunciation made people laugh. And slowly, carefully, his relationship with Velkara deepened. They weren't in love, not yet, but they liked each other. They respected each other. They laughed together over meals and discussed serious matters late into the night. She was brilliant and funny and surprisingly kind when her formal mask dropped. Jake realized he was happy. Despite everything, despite the strangeness and the pressure and the worry about Krathnor, he was happy. Then came the day when Jake presented his treatment plan for electromagnetic hypersensitivity. The medical council loved it. They wanted to implement it immediately. Prince Celerix would be the first to receive the treatment, a series of gentle therapies designed to help his nervous system adjust to electromagnetic fields. The treatment worked. Within a week, Prince Celerix was noticeably calmer. He could be held by other Zirathi without crying. He slept better. He smiled more. And Jake wasn't the only one who could comfort him anymore. The news spread across the empire. The prince consort, the human who had married their queen, had healed the royal heir. Suddenly, Jake wasn't just a curiosity or a political inconvenience. He was a hero. 3 months passed. Jake had never been so busy in his entire life. Every day brought new challenges, new lessons, new responsibilities. But he was learning. Slowly, he was becoming the prince consort that the Zerathi Empire needed. He spent his mornings in the medical wing now. With Vareth's help, he had established a clinic specifically for treating electromagnetic hypersensitivity. They had identified 12 other Zerathi children with the same condition as Prince Solarix. All of them were responding well to treatment. Parents brought their children from across the empire, grateful tears in their eyes when Jake explained that their babies could be helped. The afternoons were for studying governance. Jake had learned about the complex web of territories, trade agreements, and political alliances that made up the Zerathi Empire. His tutor, an elderly Zerathi named Serath, was patient with his questions. She never made him feel stupid, even when he asked about things any Zerathi child would know. Evenings were the best part of the day. That was when Jake spent time with Prince Solarix and Velkara. The baby was thriving now. He laughed often, played with his toys, and was starting to make sounds that might become words. Jake loved watching him grow, and Velkara, Jake's relationship with her had changed. They weren't just political partners anymore. They had become friends. Real friends. They talked late into the night about everything from philosophy to their childhoods. She told him stories about her late mate Kelos and the grief of losing him. Jake told her about growing up on Earth, about his grandmother who had taught him the lullaby that had changed his life. Sometimes Jake caught himself looking at her and feeling something more than friendship. Something warm and complicated that he wasn't quite ready to name. He thought maybe she felt it too, from the way she sometimes smiled at him or touched his hand for just a moment longer than necessary. But they never spoke about it. Their marriage was still primarily political, even if they genuinely liked each other. Jake didn't want to rush into anything more. The human delegation visited often. Captain Carter was proud of how well he had adapted. Dr. Lisa Grant helped with the medical research, fascinated by Zerathi biology. Even Peter Lang had warmed up to Jake, impressed by how much he had learned about diplomacy. "You're a natural at this," Peter told him one day. "You have a gift for making people feel heard." "I just listen to them," Jake said. "And I try to be honest. That's all." That's more than most politicians manage. Everything seemed to be going well. Jake should have known it was too good to last. The first sign of trouble came during a public ceremony. Jake was standing beside Velkara on a platform overlooking a crowd of thousands. They were celebrating the Festival of Unity, an important Zerathi holiday. Jake held Prince Solarix in his arms while Velkara gave a speech about peace and cooperation. Solarix had been fed an hour ago. He should have been content. But suddenly the baby began to cry, not just fussing but screaming in obvious pain. His little body went rigid, and the lights on his skin blinked rapidly in distress. Jake immediately tried his usual techniques. Swaying, humming, gentle pressure. Nothing worked. Solarix screamed louder. His skin felt too hot, almost burning. Velkara's face went pale. She cut her speech short. "We must get him to the medical wing now." They rushed through the corridors with guards running alongside them. Jake's heart pounded. This wasn't normal. Something was very wrong. In the medical wing, Vareth and his team worked quickly. They ran tests while Jake held the screaming baby, trying desperately to comfort him. Velkara stood nearby, all 4 of her hands clenched tight. "I don't understand," Vareth said, looking at the readings. "His electromagnetic sensitivity should be under control. The treatment was working. But these readings, it's as if he's been exposed to something that triggered a severe reaction. What could cause that?" Jake asked, his voice tight with worry. "I don't know. We need to analyze everything he's had contact with today. Food, clothing, everything." It took hours, but finally Solarix calmed down. Whatever had caused the reaction seemed to be passing. The baby fell into an exhausted sleep in Jake's arms. Jake didn't want to let him go. "Take him to the royal quarters," Vareth said. "Let him rest. We'll continue investigating." That night, Jake sat beside Solarix's bassinet watching the baby sleep. He barely moved from the spot. Velkara sat beside him, equally worried. "This is my fault," Jake said quietly. "I thought I had figured out his condition. I thought the treatment was working. You saved him, Belcara said firmly. Without your treatment, he would have been like this all the time. This was something unusual, something unexpected. But Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. The next morning brought devastating news. Varath had found the cause of Solarix's reaction. Someone had tampered with the baby's crystalline growth supplements. The formula had been altered to include a compound that would cause severe electromagnetic disturbance in sensitive individuals. In other words, someone had deliberately poisoned Prince Solarix. This is an assassination attempt, Belcara said, her voice cold with fury. The entire council had been called to an emergency meeting. Someone tried to kill my son. The room erupted in shocked voices. Jake felt sick. Who would hurt a baby? Crathnor stood up. His face was grave, but Jake thought he saw something else in the Chancellor's eyes. Something that looked almost like satisfaction. Your Majesty, this is a tragedy, Crathnor said. But we must ask the difficult question. Who had access to the prince's supplements? Many people, Varath said. Medical staff, royal attendants, and the prince consort, Crathnor finished. Jake Morrison personally oversees the prince's medical care. He prepares many of his supplements himself. The room went silent. Every eye turned to Jake. Wait, Jake said, his voice shaking. You think I did this? That I hurt Solarix? I am merely stating facts, Crathnor said smoothly. You had access. You have knowledge of how to alter compounds, and you are an outsider who married into the royal family through unusual circumstances. Perhaps this was your plan all along. Gain our trust, then eliminate the heir. That's insane. Jake stood up, anger overriding his fear. I love that baby. I would never hurt him. So you claim, Crathnor said. But how can we know the true intentions of a human? Your species is new to us. Perhaps you serve other masters. Perhaps Earth sent you to destabilize our empire. Enough, Belcara's voice cracked like thunder. I will not hear such accusations without evidence. The evidence is circumstantial but concerning, Crathnor said. I propose that Jake Morrison be placed under house arrest until we complete a full investigation. For the safety of the prince. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the council. Even some of Jake's supporters looked uncertain. Belcara's face was anguished. She looked at Jake and he saw the conflict in her eyes. She wanted to believe him, but she was also a mother protecting her child. Very well, she said, and Jake felt his heart break. Jake Morrison will be confined to his quarters until the investigation is complete. But I want answers quickly, and I want them to be thorough. Guards escorted Jake back to his rooms. They weren't rough, but they made it clear he was a prisoner. The door sealed behind him with a soft sound that felt like the end of the world. Jake sat down heavily. He couldn't believe this was happening. 3 months ago he had been a nobody. Then he had become a prince. Now he was a suspected criminal. Who had done this? Who had hurt Solarix and framed Jake for it? The answer was obvious. Crathnor. The Chancellor had been against Jake from the beginning. He had the access, the knowledge, and the motive. But how could Jake prove it? A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Jake's communication panel lit up. It was Dr. Lisa Grant. Jake, I heard what happened. Are you okay? Not really, Jake said honestly. Lisa, I didn't do this. You have to believe me. I know you didn't. Captain Carter knows it too. We're going to help you. Lisa's face was determined. I'm coming over. We're going to figure this out. Over the next few hours, Lisa managed to get permission to visit Jake under the pretense of medical consultation. She brought her tablet and a fierce determination. Okay, she said, settling into a chair. Let's think this through. Who benefits from Solarix being hurt and you being blamed? Crathnor, Jake said immediately. He's wanted me gone since day one. Then we need proof. Real proof that he was involved. They spent hours going through security footage, medical records, and supply logs. It was tedious work, but slowly a pattern emerged. The tampering had happened during a specific window, when most of the medical staff was attending a ceremony. Only a few people had been in that area. Look at this, Lisa said excitedly. This footage shows Crathnor entering the medical wing during that time. He claimed he was checking on supplies for the council meeting. But why would the High Chancellor personally do that? It's not much, Jake said. But it's something. More digging revealed financial records showing that Crathnor had been paying someone in the medical staff. A young attendant named Korath, who had access to the supplement storage. "We need to talk to this Korath," Lisa said. "If we can get him to confess." But Korath had disappeared. He hadn't shown up for work in 2 days and no one knew where he was. "Krathnor must have gotten rid of him," Jake said darkly. "Cleaned up the loose end." They were at a dead end. The evidence they had was suggestive but not conclusive. It wouldn't be enough to clear Jake's name or prove Krathnor's guilt. Jake paced his quarters, thinking hard. There had to be a way. He couldn't let Krathnor win. Not just for his own sake, but for Solarix. If the Chancellor succeeded in removing Jake, what would stop him from trying to hurt the prince again? Then Jake had an idea. It was risky. It was probably stupid, but it might work. "Lisa, can you get me access to the Empire-wide communication system?" "Why?" "Because I'm going to do something that will either save me or destroy me. I'm going to tell the truth. To everyone." Lisa looked worried. "Jake, the Queen ordered you to stay quiet during the investigation." "I know, but I can't sit here and do nothing while Krathnor manipulates everyone." Jake's jaw set stubbornly. "The Zerathi people deserve to know what's really happening, and I deserve the chance to defend myself." Lisa studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, let me see what I can do." It took some technical creativity and help from a sympathetic communications officer, but Lisa managed to give Jake access to broadcast a message. Not officially, not with authorization, but it would reach people. Jake stood in front of the camera, his heart pounding. This was it. He took a deep breath and began to speak. "My name is Jake Morrison. 3 months ago, I was a medical officer on a human ship. Then I met Queen Velcara and Prince Solarix. I soothed a crying baby and everything changed." He paused. "I didn't ask to marry the Queen. I didn't ask to become Prince Consort. But I said yes because I wanted to help. I wanted to heal Prince Solarix and build a bridge between humans and Zerathi." He explained the medical research, the treatment, the success they had achieved. Then he told them about the poisoning. "I'm accused of hurting the baby I love. I'm accused of betraying the trust you gave me. But I swear to you I'm innocent. Someone else did this. Someone who doesn't want humans and Zerathi to be friends. Someone who saw me as a threat to their power." Jake looked directly into the camera. "Hi, Chancellor Krathnor, I know you're watching. I challenge you to a traditional trial by testimony. Present your evidence. Let me present mine. Let the people decide who is telling the truth." It was a gamble. Trial by testimony was an ancient Zerathi tradition, where 2 parties presented their cases directly to the public. It wasn't used often anymore, but it was still legally binding. Krathnor couldn't refuse without looking like he had something to hide. Jake ended the broadcast and sat back. What he had done was probably going to make things worse. He had gone against the Queen's orders. He had challenged a High Chancellor. He might have just destroyed his last chance at redemption, but at least he had fought back. At least he had told his truth. Now he could only wait to see what happened next. The door to his quarters opened. Velcara stood there. Her face was unreadable. "That was foolish," she said quietly. "I know. It was also brave." She came inside and sat down beside him, and it was exactly what needed to happen. "Krathnor cannot refuse your challenge now, not without the people suspecting him." Jake looked at her hopefully. "You believe me?" "I always believed you," she said softly. "But I'm also a queen. I had to follow proper procedure, had to investigate. I could not show favoritism even to my mate." She reached out and took his hand. "But in my heart I never doubted you. You love Solarix. I see it every time you hold him." Jake felt tears prick his eyes. "Thank you. Now we must prepare for the trial. We must find the truth and expose Krathnor before he can do more harm." Velcara squeezed his hand. "We are partners, Jake Morrison. Partners fight together." For the first time since the nightmare began, Jake felt hope. The trial by testimony would take place in 3 days. 3 days to gather evidence, to prepare arguments, to build a case strong enough to clear Jake's name and expose Krathnor. The entire Empire was watching. Jake's broadcast had spread across every communication channel. Some people supported him, moved by his obvious sincerity. Others remained suspicious, believing the Chancellor's accusations. The Empire was divided, and that division could tear everything apart. Jake worked around the clock with Velcara, Lisa, and a small group of loyal supporters. They reviewed every piece of evidence, every security recording, every financial transaction. Slowly, they built a picture of Krathnor's conspiracy. The Chancellor had been planning this for months. He had recruited Korath, the medical attendant, with promises of wealth and position. He had timed the poisoning to coincide with a public event, ensuring maximum impact and scandal. He had carefully laid the groundwork to make Jake look guilty, but Crathnor had made mistakes. Small ones, but they were there. A payment that was slightly too large. A visit to the medical wing that had no official purpose. A conversation with Korath that had been partially captured on a security recording. It's not enough, Peter Lang said. He had arrived from the horizon's edge to help with the legal strategy. It's all circumstantial. Crathnor can explain it away if he's clever. Then we need Korath, Velkara said. We need him to testify against Crathnor. But we don't know where he is, Jake said frustratedly. He's been missing for days, Verath spoke up. He had been quiet, studying something on his tablet. I may know where he is. I've been analyzing medical records from across the Empire. 3 days ago, a young Zirathi matching Korath's description checked into a clinic on the Outer Rim. He was treated for severe electromagnetic burns. Burns? Jake leaned forward. What would cause that? Someone trying to silence him, Velkara said grimly. Crathnor tried to kill him, but he survived, Verath said. And if we can reach him before Crathnor realizes he's alive, then we have our witness, Jake finished. Velkara made the decision immediately. I'm sending a security team to retrieve Korath. They will protect him and bring him here for the trial. The team left within the hour. Jake spent the rest of the day preparing his testimony. He would speak first, telling his story from the beginning. Then they would present evidence. If Korath arrived in time, his testimony would be the final piece that proved Crathnor's guilt. The night before the trial, Jake couldn't sleep. He stood on the balcony of his quarters looking out at the stars. So much had happened in just a few months. His entire life had changed because he had stepped forward to help a crying baby. You should rest, Velkara said softly behind him. Jake turned. She stood in the doorway, her crystalline skin glowing softly in the dim light. She wasn't wearing her formal robes. Just a simple dress that made her look less like a queen and more like the person Jake had come to know. I can't sleep, he admitted. I keep thinking about tomorrow. What if we can't prove my innocence? What if Crathnor wins? Then we will face that together. She came to stand beside him. But I do not believe he will win. The truth is powerful, Jake, and you have the truth on your side. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Jake spoke, voicing something he had been thinking about for weeks. When this is over, when things settle down, what happens to us? What do you mean? Our marriage. It started as a political arrangement, a way to fulfill an ancient law, but it's become more than that, hasn't it? Jake looked at her. At least for me it has. Velkara's expression softened. For me as well. You have become my friend, Jake Morrison, my partner, my confidant. I trust you with my son, with my empire, with my heart. I think I'm falling in love with you, Jake said quietly. I didn't expect it. I didn't plan for it. But somehow, in the middle of all this chaos, I fell in love with an alien queen. Velkara reached out and cupped his face with one of her hands. Her touch was gentle, warm. And I think I am falling in love with a human who stepped forward when everyone else stepped back, who loved my son before he loved me, who chose duty over safety. She leaned down and Jake stood on his toes and they kissed. It was strange and wonderful and perfect. Different species, different worlds, but in that moment, none of it mattered. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. Win or lose tomorrow, Velkara said. I am grateful for the day you walked into my life. Me too, Jake said. Even if I was completely speechless at the time. She laughed, that beautiful musical sound he loved. They stayed on the balcony until dawn, talking about the future they hoped to build together. The day of the trial arrived. The grand hall was filled beyond capacity. Every seat was taken and thousands more watched through holographic projection. The human delegation sat in a place of honor. Captain Carter gave Jake a nod of encouragement. Ambassador Torres looked nervous but supportive. The trial master, an ancient Zirathi named Vorath, called the proceedings to order. He explained the rules. Jake would present first, followed by Crathnor. Then witnesses could speak. Finally, the people would vote on who they believed. Jake stood and walked to the center platform. His legs felt shaky, but he forced himself to stand tall. He looked out at the sea of faces, both Zirathi and human, all watching him. I'm not a politician, he began. I'm not a diplomat. I'm just a medical officer who wanted to help people. When I first met Prince Solarix, I didn't think about politics or power. I just saw a baby who was suffering and I wanted to make him feel better. He told his story simply and honestly. The first meeting with Velkara, the crying baby, the ancient law, his decision to accept the marriage proposal, the discovery of Solarix's medical condition, the treatment that had saved not just the prince but other Zerathi children. I've made this empire my home, Jake said. I've grown to love the Zerathi people. I've fallen in love with your queen, and I would die before I hurt Prince Solarix. He's like a son to me. He presented the evidence they had gathered. The security, footage showing Krathnor in places he shouldn't be, the financial records showing suspicious payments, the timeline that proved someone other than Jake had the opportunity to poison the supplements. I'm not asking you to trust me because I'm Prince Consort, Jake said. I'm asking you to look at the evidence and decide for yourselves. Someone tried to hurt an innocent baby and destroy the alliance between humans and Zerathi. Don't let them succeed. He sat down. His hands were shaking, but he had said everything he needed to say. Krathnor stood. The Chancellor was composed, confident. He spoke smoothly about the dangers of letting outsiders into positions of power. He painted Jake as a manipulator who had used Solarix to gain influence. The evidence against him is circumstantial but compelling, Krathnor said. And we must ask ourselves who benefits from the prince's suffering. Jake Morrison. He became a hero by treating a condition that conveniently appeared shortly after he arrived. Perhaps he caused the condition in the first place. It was a clever argument. Jake could see some people in the audience nodding. Krathnor was good at this. As for the evidence against me, Krathnor continued, it is easily explained. I visited the medical wing to check on supplies for a council meeting. I made payments to Korath for legitimate work. These are the actions of a concerned official, nothing more. Where is Korath now? Jake called out, unable to stop himself. Why has he disappeared? I do not know, Krathnor said smoothly. Perhaps he is involved in this conspiracy. Perhaps he is another victim of Jake Morrison's schemes. The hall erupted in argument. People shouted support for Jake or Krathnor. The trial master called for order. Are there witnesses to speak? Vorath asked. Vorath stood and presented medical evidence showing that Jake couldn't have altered the supplements without leaving obvious traces. Dr. Lisa Grant testified about Jake's character and his dedication to helping sick children. Several Zerathi parents spoke about how Jake had healed their children. But Krathnor had witnesses too, officials who questioned Jake's knowledge and experience. Zerathi who believed humans couldn't be trusted. The testimonies were balanced and Jake felt his hope beginning to fade. Then the doors to the hall opened. A security team entered, escorting a young Zerathi who looked terrified. Korath. They had found him. The hall went silent. Krathnor's confident expression cracked for just a moment before he recovered. Korath was brought to the testimony platform. He looked at Krathnor with fear, then at Jake with guilt. Speak, Vorath commanded. Tell us what you know. Korath's voice shook as he began. I worked in the medical wing. High Chancellor Krathnor approached me 6 months ago. He offered me money and a position in his staff if I would help him. Help him how? Vorath asked. He wanted to discredit the Prince Consort. He said humans were dangerous, that Jake Morrison would destroy our empire. He convinced me to tamper with Prince Solarix's supplements. Korath's voice broke. I didn't want to hurt the prince, but the Chancellor said it would just make him sick, not kill him. He said it would prove that Jake Morrison was incompetent. And after you did this? Vorath prompted. I felt guilty. I told the Chancellor I wanted to confess. That's when. Korath pulled back his sleeve, revealing terrible burns on his arm. He tried to kill me. He attacked me with an electromagnetic weapon. I barely escaped. I've been hiding, afraid he would find me and finish the job. The hall erupted in chaos. Shouts of anger, shock, disbelief. Krathnor stood, his face twisted with fury. This is a lie. This human has poisoned this young fool's mind. I am a loyal servant of the Empire. Enough! Velkara stood from her throne. Her voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Korath, are you willing to swear to this testimony under truth verification?" Truth verification was a technology the Zerathi had developed. It wasn't perfect, but it could detect deliberate lies with high accuracy. Korath nodded. "Yes, Your Majesty, I am." The verification was performed. The results showed that Korath was telling the truth. He had been manipulated by Krathnor. He had tampered with the supplements, and the Chancellor had tried to kill him to keep him silent. Krathnor made a desperate attempt to flee. Guards blocked his path. He was arrested on the spot, still protesting his innocence even as the evidence condemned him. Vorath called for the vote. It was overwhelming. The people believed Jake. His name was cleared. Jake sat down hard, relief flooding through him. It was over. He was free. Velkara came down from her throne and pulled him into an embrace. Around them, the hall filled with cheers. The human delegation was celebrating. Even some of the Zerathi officials who had been skeptical of Jake were applauding. But Velkara pulled back and looked seriously at Jake. "Krathnor tried to destroy you. He tried to hurt my son. By our laws, the penalty for such crimes is death." Jake thought about it. Part of him wanted Krathnor to face the harshest punishment, but he also thought about what kind of empire he wanted to help build. "What if we showed mercy instead?" he said quietly. "Exile him, strip his titles and power, but let him live. Show your people that you can be strong and compassionate." Velkara considered this. Then she nodded. "A wise suggestion. Very well. Krathnor will be exiled to the outer territories. He will live, but he will never hold power again." She turned to address the hall. "Let this be a new beginning for our empire. We will be strong, but we will also be kind. We will embrace new ideas and new friends, and we will build a future where humans and Zerathi stand together." The hall erupted in cheers again. In the days that followed, life slowly returned to normal. Krathnor was exiled along with his closest conspirators. Korath received a reduced sentence since he had cooperated and was assigned to community service in the medical wing. Jake's position as prince consort was secured. He continued his medical work, establishing programs to help Zerathi children across the empire. He also started a cultural exchange program, bringing human teachers to Zerathi worlds and sending Zerathi students to Earth. His relationship with Velkara deepened. They were no longer just political partners. They were genuinely in love, building a life together that neither of them had expected. Sometimes Jake still couldn't believe this was his reality. An alien queen loved him. He was raising an alien prince. He was helping to shape an interstellar empire. 6 months after the trial, Jake stood in the newly opened Human Zerathi Cultural Center. It was a beautiful building that blended architecture from both species. Human children played with Zerathi children, learning each other's games and languages. Captain Carter and Dr. Lisa Grant had come to visit. They walked through the center with Jake, amazed by what he had accomplished. "You've built something incredible here," Carter said. "You should be proud I didn't do it alone," Jake said. "I had a lot of help." Velkara approached, holding Prince Solarix. The baby was now 1 year old and growing fast. He saw Jake and reached out his little arms, making happy sounds. Jake took him and held him close. Solarix was completely healthy now. The treatment had worked perfectly. The baby grabbed Jake's nose and giggled. "He adores you," Velkara said fondly. "The feeling is mutual." Jake kissed the top of Solarix's head. The baby's skin was warm and smooth, and his little lights blinked in contentment. Lisa smiled at the scene. "Do you ever regret it?" Stepping forward that day, Jake thought about it. He thought about his old life, his small apartment, his simple routine. He had been content then, but now, no, he said honestly. "I found something here I didn't even know I was looking for. A family, a purpose, a home." Velkara moved closer and put an arm around him. "And we found someone who saw past our differences to what really mattered: kindness, courage, love." They stood together, watching the children play, human and Zerathi, learning and growing side by side. It was the future Jake had hoped for, the future he had fought for. Prince Solarix began to fuss a little. Jake immediately started humming that old lullaby, the one his grandmother had taught him so long ago, but now he sang it in both English and Zerathi, the two languages blending together beautifully. The baby settled down, listening to the familiar song. Around them, some of the Zerathi children started to hum along. They had learned the song too. It had become a symbol of the unity between their peoples. Jake looked up at Velkera. She smiled down at him with those beautiful opal eyes, and he knew he was exactly where he was meant to be. It had all started with a crying baby and a proposal that left him speechless. But Jake had found his voice. He had found his place. He had found love in the most unexpected place in the universe, and he wouldn't change a single moment of it. As the sun set over the cultural center, casting rainbow colors through the crystal structures, Jake held his family close, his alien wife, his alien son, his impossibly strange and wonderful life. He was Jake Morrison, medical officer turned prince consort, the human who had soothed an alien baby and changed the course of two civilizations, and he was finally, completely, and utterly at peace. The children's laughter echoed through the center, human and Zerathi voices mingling together. It was the sound of hope,